Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. So today's topic is pretty much the title. I mean, really, why are my Indian cousins so rude? It wasn't always like this. And it's actually, for me, is a very, very confusing situation. So I was born in India, and my cousins, almost every single one of my cousins, with the exception of two, all my other cousins, like 80 of them, they were all born in India. And when I would go back as a kid, because I didn't grow up in India, I was just born there. So I would go back to India for in the 1980s and the 1990s. And, things were so different back then. So my Indian cousins currently are super rude. I don't know what their problem is, but they are rude on purpose, like intentionally. They are inconsiderate. They make fun of you. They put you down. It's super confusing to me. And so, of course, the year right now is 2023. But my cousins have been like this for at least 15 years. But they didn't used to be like this. So my cousins were born and raised in India. And, we were all raised with the typical Indian values, which, things like be nice to others, be kind, be modest, be humble, help others. Those values, which are just, they're really, really good values, and they're wonderful values, and like really just a lot of morals, like very good morals. Treat other people nicely, treat other people the way you'd want to be treated. And so my Indian cousins, born and raised in India, were raised with these very good Indian values. And when I would go back to India to visit my cousins and my aunts and my uncles in the 1980s and the 1990s, everybody I interacted with, they were very welcoming, they were kind, they were nice, they were humble, they were modest. They were very nice people. But then, I don't know, all of a sudden, my cousins who grew up in India, they are complete jerks. They are rude. They're arrogant. They're intentionally rude. Like, I don't know what their problem is. And it's really bizarre to me because I was thinking, what happened? We were raised with these really good Indian values. We were raised with these really good, positive values, good morals. Be nice to people, help people, be modest, be humble, like, don't be rude. And now my Indian cousins are the exact opposite of that. And some of my Indian cousins have moved out of India. So, some of them are moving, like they're living in the US, some of them are in Canada, and some of my cousins who are born and raised in India are still in India. And they're all really, really rude now. They're very rude, very impatient, very rude. And it flabbergasts me because I'm like, what happened? Why are they so rude now? And so I have cousins in the big cities in India, and I have cousins that are in the smaller, like, villages of India. And I will tell you that it is my cousins from the bigger cities in India who are absolutely rude now. Very rude. Just very rude. And I keep thinking, what happened? And so this is my answer to this, okay? I don't know what the actual answer is, but what I think it is that they have Americanized. Because I know that the bigger cities in India, like, they are so trying to copy America. They are trying to imitate America. And so I think because they are so Americanized, like, a lot of those values of, because America does not really have good morals and it doesn't have good values. But because I think my cousins from the bigger cities in India, they Americanized, I think that's why they've also thrown away those really good values and morals that we were raised with in Indian culture. I think they've thrown those away, and they're trying to act more American. And I think for them that means, like, being more rude and throwing away your Indian culture, which a lot of them have done. A lot of the cousins I've talked to who are super rude, they have thrown away their Indian culture and they're trying to be American. So to me, that is the answer. Now, I don't know if that is correct or not. I don't know if it's true, But to me, I think that's the answer. I think it's because they Americanized and they value American pop culture over like the depth of Indian culture, like what the true Indian culture, like they value American, superficial American pop culture over Indian culture, which has been around for thousands of years, right? But they're picking American pop culture. And in America, like being rude is considered cool, which is really stupid. I mean, think about that. You're being rude to people and people think you're cool for being rude. I mean, that's pretty stupid. So to me, because when my cousins from the big cities, when we were all kids, they were really nice. They were nice to me. They were humble. They were modest. I mean, they were never intentionally rude to me, or if they were, it was once in a while, but it wasn't like an all the time thing. But they were, and much more welcoming, very welcoming, much more forgiving. So if I ever made a mistake, they were much more willing to forgive me. And they were never like, they would never go out of their way to intentionally be rude to me. So I don't know why, but and my aunt, I mean, that's just how I grew up though. In the 1980s and 1990s, every time I was with my cousins, I absolutely loved to be with them because they were such nice people, back then. But now they are very rude, very atrocious. I have no idea what the problem is, but I basically, I don't really talk to my cousins anymore because they are so rude and they're so nasty. And these are my cousins from the bigger cities. I basically just avoid them, which is actually what they've been doing to me for several years. But my cousins still talk to my parents, which is interesting because I still talk to their parents, who would be my uncles and aunts, because my uncles and my aunts, they still have those really good traditional Indian values. So my uncles and my aunts, like they're nice people. They don't get rude on purpose. They don't have those like big egos or whatever. Like they're still nice people. And so I appreciate talking to them because, I'm talking to somebody who is a nice person. But their children, who are my cousins, are very rude. I mean, I just do not know what their problem is. I'm not sure why they're like that now. I mean, I honestly think it's because they've Americanized. And it's not good. It's definitely not a change for the better. I think they think it's better because they think that they're modern. But if you really think about it, like you're just being a jerk. Like you're being rude. Is that really an improvement? It's not really an improvement. Anyone who's a jerk is never going to be better than someone who's nice and kind. And in America, there's a lot of really messed up priorities. There's a lot of really rude people, and they make it seem like being rude is cool, and it's not. Like, if you're being rude under the assumption that it's cool, like, you're just wrong. Like, being rude is not nice. It's not cool. You're just rude. Okay? So, like, yeah, maybe you're being mean and nasty and it makes you feel better, but you're just, in the end, you're just a rude person. One of my cousins who lives in Canada, I talk to his parents all the time. Now, his dad can be a little bit vulgar. I mean, he's a character. So his dad is definitely not always polite, and his father is not always the nicest person. But in general, like, he is. And then, of course, I talk to his mother, and she's also fine. I mean, she's fine to talk to. Like, they are older Indian people, and they do have good values. But their son, who is my cousin, I haven't talked to him in years, and I talked to him a few months ago. And I was a little bit nervous because I hadn't talked to him for so long. So I was nervous, so I kind of laughed a little bit. And he didn't want to talk to me because I was laughing. Because it's like when I get nervous, I laugh a little bit sometimes. So he literally just was like, okay, I'm going to give the phone back to my dad. Like, no, take care, no, nice talking to you, no, anything. Just because I was laughing because I was nervous, he just was like, okay, I'm going to give the phone back to my dad, just like that. And he just handed the phone back to his dad. No, not even a goodbye. So very rude. And like the way he said it was really rude. Now, he's not the only cousin who's done something like that to me before. When I was visiting India a few years ago, there was the thing when we were younger, like, if somebody called on the phone, they would immediately say, hey, so-and-so is here, talk to this person. So my uncle's son called, and then, the uncle said, yeah, hold on, here, talk to your cousin. And then he gave me the phone. And so right away, his son was kind of rude on the phone. Like he didn't seem like he wanted to talk to me, which is fine. But then he asked me this question, which I didn't know how to answer, but I answered honestly. But he misunderstood my answer and he didn't ask for clarification. But he said, "What do you think of India?" And I said, I mean, it's fine. And he said, "Isn't it so much better now?" And then I actually, when I see India Americanizing, I do not think that's better. I think India Americanizing is actually a very bad thing. And he said something like, "Well, isn't India just so much better now?" And then I didn't know how to answer that, but I decided I'm going to be honest. And I said, "Well, I mean, there's good things in India and there's bad things in India." When I say bad things, basically the fact that India is imitating America, to me, that's a very bad thing. But he didn't ask me for anything. He just got offended and then hung up the phone. I was like, "Are you serious?" Just because I said there's good things and bad things, and this is true for any country in the world, right? Not just India, but this is true for anywhere in the world. There's good and bad everywhere you go. And for me, actually, the fact that India is copying America and the fact that India is Americanizing, people are acting American and dressing American and going out and getting drunk and sleeping around. Yeah, I don't think that's good. Actually, I think that's terrible. So, the India that I loved was back in the 1980s and 1990s when it was still India. It wasn't a stupid, cheap imitation of America, which is essentially what India is becoming. And it's really sad because it's not just India, right? It's like all over the world. So many places are just a cheap imitation of America. I mean, that's not good. But so my cousin, he was rude anyway. He didn't seem to want to talk to me. But then he asked me, "Well, isn't India so much better now?" He didn't bother asking me for clarification. He just got mad and hung up the phone. But like I said, my point was that the fact that India is just trying to be like America is bad, and I don't like it. And it is bad. The India I like is India. I don't want an imitation of America in India. Like, that's stupid. But so I think the fact that my cousins from the big cities have all Americanized, I think that's why they're rude. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what their problem is. But the fact that they act like this, the fact that they're so rude over the dumbest things, I mean, it's like such immaturity. It's like talking to a rude person in America, but even worse, which is really an insult because there's rude people in America, but it's like the Indian people who are being rude, it's like even worse than American rude people. And that is really not a compliment. That is a huge insult. But I think my cousins in India think it's like cool to be rude and cool to be a jerk because that's how Americans act. It is my cousins from the bigger cities that act like this. And my cousins from the smaller cities, from the smaller villages and stuff, they're definitely getting more of this like rudeness to them, but they still have a lot of those really good Indian qualities. They're still nice, polite, kind. They're still forgiving. And, they give people a second chance, which I think is really nice. But I see the changes happening in them too. And I just think that's so sad. I mean, I see the family breaking up, and the family's been breaking up for a long time, but I see it more and more now. Like a lot of my cousins from the bigger cities, a lot of them do not talk to each other, or if they do talk to each other, it's not very often, and it is really interesting. And this is the kind of stuff that happens, right? The more and more you westernize, the more and more you Americanize, the more and more you modernize, this is the kind of stuff that happens. Families break apart, families don't stay together. So the fact that we used to be together when we were younger, when we were not, like they hadn't Americanized, we were still a family. But now it's like people don't talk to each other. So it is interesting. But yeah, so I think the fact that my Indian cousins are so rude, so arrogant, I think it's because they're Americanized and they think this is how they're supposed to behave. But, for whoever's listening and for any Indians who are listening and you think this is cool to act like an American obnoxious brat, it's not. And I will tell you, the Indian values of being kind, being polite, being respectful, those values are worth so much more than American values. And really, because American values are really not worth a whole lot of good. There's a lot of really bad values in America, and that's what people are copying. But yeah, the Indian values that I grew up with, that my cousins grew up with, that like I still have, I feel like I still have it. Even though I grew up in America, those Indian values were so important to me. Like I still live that way to this date. But it's so sad that my Indian cousins who grew up in India have lost their Indian way of life. It's just sad and it's pathetic. And I'm trying to raise my kids to be, have those good Indian values because the values in America are really not that good. And I know that firsthand. If anybody from India is listening to this and you want to add your thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. Just don't be rude. Thanks so much. Have a good day.